Ethan had never expected to be assigned to work with an alien species. The idea of traveling across the galaxy to research an entirely different culture was fascinating, yet intimidating. But when he first met Zara, he had no idea how much it would change his life. Zara was a member of the alien race, a species known for their intelligence and curiosity. She was tall and graceful, her skin a soft shade of violet, her eyes the color of the deep sky. From the moment she greeted Ethan, her demeanor was warm and open. But there was always something mysterious about her, something Ethan couldn't quite place. They had been assigned to the same research project, studying the differences in reproduction across species. Ethan was a biologist, while Zara was a sociologist. They both had a shared interest in human biology and culture, and this common ground had quickly formed a bond between them. They spent hours together in the research lab, discussing everything, from human anatomy to the various ways different species reproduced. At first, their conversations were strictly academic. Ethan was used to keeping things professional, focusing on the scientific aspects of their research. Zara, on the other hand, was always curious about the emotional side of human reproduction. She asked questions that Ethan found difficult to answer. "How does human reproduction feel?" she asked one day, her violet eyes fixed on him with genuine interest. "I understand the biological processes, but what does it mean to you emotionally?" Ethan was taken off guard. It wasn't the first time Zara had asked questions that ventured into personal territory, but this one felt different. He shifted, uncomfortably in his chair, trying to find the right words. "It's a complex thing," he began slowly. "For humans, it's not just about biology. It's about love, trust, and connection. It's about sharing something deeply personal with someone you care about." Zara nodded thoughtfully, her eyes never leaving his. "So it's not just about making a child?" "No," Ethan replied, his voice quieter now. "Not at all. It's much more than that." She seemed to be processing this, as if she were trying to understand something completely new. She had a way of making everything seem like an open question one she was determined to find the answer to. The next few days were filled with more of these deep, unexpected questions. Zara wanted to know about the rituals of love and intimacy, how humans formed connections that went beyond the physical. Ethan found himself drawn to her curiosity, to the way she didn't just take facts at face value, but sought to understand the feelings behind them. One evening, after a particularly long discussion about human relationships, Zara looked at him with a soft, almost shy expression. "Ethan," she began, "I've been thinking. If human reproduction is so deeply emotional, does that mean that sharing it with someone is ... special?" Ethan was unsure how to respond. He could tell that Zara was grappling with something she didn't fully understand. There was something vulnerable in her voice, something that made him pause. "Yes," he said finally, "it's special. Something that you share with someone you trust, someone you care for deeply." Zara fell silent for a moment, her gaze drifting to the floor. Ethan could sense that she was trying to process this new understanding. She had always been an open book when it came to her studies, but now she seemed like she was experiencing something beyond research. It felt like she was starting to see humans in a way she never had before. After that conversation, Zara became more distant, almost as if she were reflecting on everything Ethan had shared with her. She still asked questions, but now they were more personal, more about the emotional side of human relationships. Ethan was beginning to notice how much her presence affected him. Her curiosity was contagious. Her intelligence made him admire her more than he was willing to admit. Days turned into weeks, and their research continued. But it wasn't just the scientific facts that occupied their minds anymore. Their conversations had become more layered, filled with unspoken feelings and growing tension. Ethan couldn't deny that he was beginning to feel something more than just friendship toward Zara, but he couldn't figure out what it meant, or what he should do about it. Then, one afternoon, while they were sitting in the lab, Zara dropped a question that left Ethan stunned. She looked at him with a curious, almost playful smile. "Ethan," she said, her voice soft and hesitant, "if I wanted to know more about how humans reproduce, In a more practical sense, do you think it would be possible for us to try it together? The question hung in the air like a heavy weight, and for a moment, Ethan wasn't sure he had heard her correctly. His heart raced in his chest, his thoughts scrambled. What did she mean? Was she serious? Was this still part of her curiosity? Or was there something deeper behind her words? Zara's expression was unreadable. She was looking at him like she was waiting for something, waiting for him to say something. Anything. Ethan had always known that Zara was intelligent and curious, but this was beyond anything he had expected. Zara, Ethan began, his voice unsteady. I don't think it's something we can just try out. It's more than just a biological process. There's a lot more to it, especially emotionally. She seemed to take in his words, nodding slowly. But there was no doubt in Ethan's mind. Zara wasn't just asking for a scientific experiment. She wanted to understand humans on a much deeper level. And in some way, he had begun to feel that understanding her had become just as important to him as the research itself. For now, all Ethan could do was think about what she had said, to understand the complexity of her request, and to figure out where their connection was leading. But one thing was certain, his relationship with Zara was about to change in ways he hadn't yet imagined. The next few days after Zara's question were filled with tension, but it wasn't the kind of tension that came from conflict. It was the kind of tension that built up when two people who were not supposed to be more than colleagues started to feel something unexpected. Ethan couldn't stop thinking about what Zara had asked. Could humans just share something as personal as reproduction with someone they didn't have a deep emotional bond with? For humans, it was supposed to mean something more, something much deeper. But Zara didn't seem to understand that yet. Ethan wasn't sure how to explain it to her. Zara continued to work alongside him, but there was a change in the air. She wasn't asking as many questions about human biology anymore, or at least not about the physical side of it. She was more focused on the emotional aspects of what it meant to be human. It was clear that she wasn't asking because she was curious about the science anymore. She was asking because she genuinely wanted to understand. One afternoon, as they sat together in the research lab, Zara asked a question that, once again, caught Ethan off guard. "Ethan," she said, her voice gentle but serious, "why do humans choose one person to share this kind of connection with? I've read about your species, and it seems that many humans choose someone to love, to share their lives with. But why?" Ethan paused. He had never really thought about it that way. He had always known that humans formed relationships for many reasons, but explaining it to an alien was a different challenge altogether. He ran his fingers through his hair and looked at Zara. She was studying him closely, as though waiting for him to reveal the answer to a mystery. "It's because love is something that humans believe can bring meaning to their lives," Ethan said softly. "We choose one person to share our most vulnerable moments with. It's not just about reproducing. It's about building a life together. It's about trust, care, and connection." Zara nodded slowly, absorbing his words. "But why does it have to be just one person? Can't humans connect with more than one being in that way?" Ethan hesitated. He had never really thought about it like that before. It was a strange question, one that made him feel uncomfortable. "It's not that humans can't connect with others," he said, choosing his words carefully. "But when it comes to reproduction, the connection is different. It's about creating a family, and most humans do that with someone they love." Zara didn't respond immediately. She seemed to be thinking deeply about what he had said. Ethan felt a strange sense of uncertainty. What was she really asking? Was she trying to understand the concept of love, or was she simply trying to understand why humans felt the way they did about relationships? After a long pause, Zara spoke again, her voice softer this time. "Ethan, I want to understand. I've never felt love the way you describe it. A species doesn't form relationships like humans do. We don't choose one person, but rather, we form bonds with many. But your words, they make me want to understand what it feels like to connect with someone on such a deep level." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't expected Zara to say something like that. She had always been so rational, so analytical. But this side of her, the one that was asking to feel, to experience love, was something Ethan had never anticipated. "I don't know how to explain it to you, Zara," Ethan said, feeling vulnerable. It's something you can only truly understand if you experience it yourself. It's a bond that grows between two people over time with trust and shared moments. It's not just physical, it's emotional. It's about giving a part of yourself to someone else. Yes. Zara's eyes softened. She didn't say anything for a moment, but Ethan could tell she was processing everything he had said. The way she looked at him was different now, less like a researcher and more like someone who was trying to understand something much deeper. I think I'm beginning to understand, Zara said quietly. But I want to experience it, Ethan. I want to understand how it feels. If I could, I would. I would want to try with you. The words hung in the air between them, thick with meaning. Ethan's pulse quickened, and for the second time in as many days, he was unsure of how to respond. His mind raced, thinking about the way Zara looked at him, the way her curiosity had transformed into something more. He had never seen her like this before, and he couldn't deny that part of him was drawn to her, to the way she seemed to want to understand him, to experience what humans felt. But there was a part of him that hesitated. Love and relationships were complicated. They weren't just about physical connections or intellectual curiosity. They were about emotions, vulnerability, and trust. And though Zara was kind and brilliant, Ethan knew that entering into something with her could change everything about their research, everything about their work together. I don't know if we're ready for something like that, Ethan said carefully. It's not just about curiosity. It's about emotions, and it's about being vulnerable. It's not something that can be rushed, not something that can be done just to understand it. It's something you have to be ready for. Zara didn't respond immediately, but her expression softened, and she nodded slowly. She seemed to understand. I think I understand, she said, her voice tinged with something like regret. I've asked too much. I was curious, but I never wanted to push you into something you weren't ready for. Ethan reached across the table, placing his hand on hers. It's not that I'm not ready, it's just ... complicated. Zara met his gaze, and for the first time, Ethan saw something in her eyes that he had never seen before. Hope. I know, she said, but I will wait, Ethan. If this is something we can try, I will be patient. I just need time to understand more. Ethan felt a weight lift from his chest. He didn't have all the answers, and he didn't know where their relationship would go. But for the first time, he realized that he didn't have to know everything. He just had to take things one step at a time, and maybe in time they would both understand what it meant to truly connect. The days that followed were quiet, but in a way that felt different. Zara and Ethan continued to work together, but their conversations were becoming less about science and more about life, about what it meant to truly connect with someone. The tension that had grown between them over the past few weeks hadn't disappeared, but it had shifted into something more comfortable. There was an unspoken understanding now, a shared space where their thoughts lingered longer than before. Ethan couldn't help but notice how his feelings for Zara had deepened. What began as admiration for her intelligence and curiosity was turning into something more personal. He found himself looking forward to their time together in the lab, but not just for the research. He wanted to hear her thoughts, to see her smile, and to feel the warmth that seemed to radiate from her every time they spoke. But there was still hesitation in the back of his mind, a fear of crossing a line they couldn't come back from. One afternoon, while they were working on their latest project, Zara turned to him with a question that made Ethan's heart skip a beat. Ethan, she said, her voice soft and almost tentative, do you believe that love can change everything? I mean, truly change a person? Ethan looked up from his notes, meeting her eyes. There was something different in the way she asked the question this time, more genuine, more vulnerable. She wasn't just curious about the science anymore. She was seeking an answer to something personal, something that had begun to matter. To her, I think love can change a lot of things, Ethan replied slowly, his thoughts focused on her words. It can change how you see the world, how you see yourself. It can make you stronger, but it can also make you more vulnerable. It's not always easy, but it's a powerful force. It makes you want to be better, to do better. Zara nodded, her expression thoughtful. I've been thinking about what you said before about how humans choose to connect with one person. I think I understand it now. It's not just about reproduction, is it? It's about sharing something with someone you trust, someone you care for. Ethan felt a lump form in his throat. He could see that Zara was beginning to understand more than she had before. But as much as he wanted to help her make sense of her feelings, he wasn't sure he was ready to open himself up that way. Love wasn't something to rush into, not even for someone as intelligent and curious as Zara. I think you're right, Ethan said softly. It's about trust. It's about building something over time, not just a moment of connection. There was a long pause between them, and in that silence, Ethan could almost feel the weight of Zara's thoughts. She was grappling with something that was beyond the logical and analytical part of her mind. She was trying to understand love, and what it meant for a human to share that love with another being. I don't know if I'm ready for love. Not in the way you describe it, Zara said quietly, her voice almost a whisper. I want to understand it. I want to feel it, even if I can't yet fully grasp what it means. And I think I want to share that with you, Ethan. The words hit Ethan like a sudden storm. There was no denying the connection he felt with Zara. He had known it for weeks now, ever since the first time they had shared a quiet moment in the lab. But hearing her say those words made him feel both elated and terrified at the same time. He wanted to feel the same way, wanted to share that bond with her, but the risk felt too great. What if things went wrong? What if their connection was only temporary? I don't want to rush into anything, Zara, Ethan said, his voice soft but firm. I don't want to take something as important as love and treat it like an experiment, not something we can just figure out overnight. Zara's gaze dropped to the floor for a moment, but when she looked back up at him, there was no sadness in her eyes, only understanding. I know, she said, and I don't expect anything from you. I just wanted you to know how I feel. I've never felt like this before, Ethan. I just want to understand, to know what it feels like to be close to someone. Her honesty was something Ethan admired. There was no pretension in her words, no fear of rejection. She had laid her feelings out on the table, raw and open, and in that moment, Ethan realized just how much she trusted him. And he felt a similar trust growing in his own heart. It wasn't love yet, not the way humans knew it, but it was something. That had the potential to grow into something deep and meaningful. I care about you too, Zara, Ethan said quietly. But I think we need more time to understand ourselves and what we want. Love isn't something you can force, no matter how much you want it. Zara smiled then, a small but genuine smile that made Ethan's heart ache with something he couldn't quite explain. I understand, and I'll wait. I'm not asking for anything more than your trust, Ethan. The words felt like a promise that no matter what happened between them, they would take it slow. They would navigate this strange new connection, at their own pace, learning and growing as they went. In the days that followed, their work continued, but so did their conversations. They talked about love, about relationships, about the things that made them human. And as much as Ethan tried to keep his emotions in check, he couldn't help but feel the pull toward Zara. The desire to understand her the way she was trying. To understand him, they had come a long way from the first day they met. And maybe, just maybe, they were on the path to something more. But for now, Ethan was content to let things unfold at their own pace. Whatever was coming, they would face it together with patience and understanding. Time seemed to move differently when Zara and Ethan were together. Their conversations had become the highlight of his day. No longer just about research or science, their talks were filled with personal stories and moments of laughter. The bond between them was undeniable. It was like they were slowly building something solid, though neither of them knew what it would eventually become. Ethan was beginning to feel a warmth in his chest whenever he thought about Zara. She was unlike anyone he had ever met. They had spent countless hours in the lab, but recently their discussions had turned toward their personal lives. Zara shared stories about her home planet, her people, and the way her society functioned. Ethan found himself fascinated by how different their cultures were. But he also admired how open Zara was in sharing everything. I never thought I'd meet someone like you, Ethan, Zara said one evening, her voice soft as they worked side by side. You've shown me things about humans that I never understood before. I didn't know your species could be so complex, so... emotional. Ethan looked at her, surprised by her words. You've always seen the surface of things. You've seen the logic, the science. But what I'm learning from you is how much more there is to life. How emotions shape us. How relationships build us into who we are. Zara smiled at him, her violet eyes gleaming. I think you're starting to understand me more than I thought possible. Ethan nodded. I think I'm starting to understand myself too. Despite all their shared moments, there was still an unspoken question. Between them, Ethan couldn't ignore the feelings that were growing stronger every day, but he still wasn't sure how to navigate them. He wasn't ready to act on anything. Not yet, but sometimes late at night, when he lay awake in his quarters. He wondered what would happen if he let himself feel what he truly felt for Zara. One evening, after a particularly intense conversation about the differences in their species relationships, Zara surprised Ethan with another question. Ethan, she said, her voice quieter than usual, have you ever wondered what it would be like for us to explore these feelings together? To understand each other not just as researchers, but as to beings who want to be close, to learn from each other in a different way. Ethan felt his heart race at her words. It wasn't the first time Zara had broached the subject, but the way she said it now was different. There was no pressure in her voice, no expectation. She was simply asking him if he, too, felt the same pull that she did. I don't know, Ethan replied, his voice soft. I think we've already shared a lot. But sometimes I wonder if it's enough. I don't want to rush anything. We've already built something special, and I don't want to risk it. Zara's expression softened, and she nodded in understanding. I don't want to rush it either, Ethan. I just want to understand more. If the connection between us is something worth exploring, but I also respect your feelings. You're not ready, I'll wait. I just don't want to lose what we've built. Ethan was touched by her words. Zara's patience and understanding made him feel like they were both walking the same path, even if that path was unclear. He reached out and placed a hand on hers, giving it a gentle squeeze. I don't want to lose it either, Ethan said, his voice steady. I'm just... unsure. Love and relationships aren't something I've always understood, but I know that I care about you, Zara, more than I've ever cared for anyone. Zara's eyes sparkled as she looked at him, her smile warm and full of trust. Then we'll figure it out together. No pressure, just ... one step at a time. Ethan smiled, feeling a sense of relief wash over him. He had feared that his uncertainty might push Zara away, but instead, it seemed to draw her closer. She wasn't asking for more than he was willing to give, and maybe that was the key to understanding what was growing between them. Patience and trust. The next few days passed in a similar way, quiet, peaceful, with moments of laughter and deep conversations. They worked on their project, but in the back of their minds, both were aware of the connection that had started to bloom. They were becoming more than just colleagues, more than just two beings from different worlds working together for a common cause. They were becoming something else entirely, though neither of them could quite define it. One evening, as they walked outside the research facility, Ethan couldn't help but notice how the sky looked different. The stars were bright, and the air was cool. It felt like the whole universe was stretched out before them, vast and mysterious. For the first time in a long while, Ethan felt like he wasn't alone in it. You know, Zara, Ethan said, breaking the comfortable silence between them. When I first came here, I never expected any of this. I never expected to feel so connected to someone who's not even from my world. Zara looked at him, her smile gentle. I never expected it either. But I think that's what makes it special. We don't come from the same place, but we're both willing to learn from each other. And that makes all the difference. Ethan smiled, his heart light. It was a simple moment, but it meant so much. He realized that, for the first time in a long time, he wasn't afraid of the future. Whatever happened between him and Zara, he knew it would be something worth exploring. And for the first time, he allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, they were on the brink of something truly special. The days went on. The questions that had once seemed impossible to answer began to make more sense. Ethan and Zara had discovered something in each other something that was both fragile and strong. And as they continued their journey, side by side, they both knew that no matter what happened, they would face it together. They would take it one step at a time. The days that followed were filled with a quiet but powerful sense of change. Ethan and Zara's bond continued to grow, though neither of them was in any rush to define it. They had become more comfortable with each other, their conversations deepening with every passing moment. There was an unspoken understanding between them, something that went beyond words. It wasn't love yet, but it was something important, something that made both of them feel connected in a way neither had ever experienced before. Ethan often found himself thinking about the moments they shared, the laughter, the small gestures of kindness, the way Zara would look at him with those thoughtful eyes, as if she was constantly trying to understand him, to learn what made him tick. And he was doing the same for her. There was so much he didn't know about her people, about her world. But there was one thing that was becoming more and more clear. They were learning from each other. And that was enough for now. One evening, after another long day of research, Zara invited Ethan to join her for a walk outside. The night air was cool, and the stars above them were clear and bright. The silence between them felt natural, comfortable. They walked side by side, neither of them feeling the need to fill the quiet with words. "You know," Zara began after a few moments, her voice soft. "I've been thinking about something. About what you said before, about love and relationships." Ethan glanced at her, his heart quickening slightly. "What about it?" Zara took a deep breath before continuing. "I think I understand more now. It's the way you explained it about building something over time, about trust and connection. It's not just a feeling, is it? It's something that's nurtured, something you have to invest in slowly." Ethan nodded. "Yes, exactly. It's not something that just happens all at once. It takes time and it takes effort. It's not always easy, but when you find the right person, it's worth it." Zara smiled, the gentle curve of her lips making Ethan feel a sense of peace he hadn't realized he was missing. "I think I'm starting to understand," she said, her voice thoughtful. "And I think that's why I've been so confused. I've never had to think about relationships in that way before. My people don't form bonds like humans do. We connect with many, but not like this. What you're describing is ... special. And it's not something I can rush." Ethan felt a warmth spread through him as he looked at Zara. He had always admired her intelligence and curiosity. But now, as he listened to her, he realized how much more she had to offer. She wasn't just an alien researcher or a curious mind. She was someone who was capable of deep emotional understanding. That made him admire her even more. "We don't have to rush anything, Zara," Ethan said softly. "I think we're both figuring this out. We don't have to put a label on it or force anything. We just need to let it grow naturally." Zara's smile deepened, and she nodded in agreement. "I don't want to rush either. I just wanted to understand. I wanted to know what it would be like to connect with someone on this level. I'm glad I met you, Ethan. I'm glad you're willing to show me." The words hung in the air, and Ethan felt a sense of relief wash over him. For the first time in a long while, he felt like he wasn't carrying the weight of uncertainty alone. They were both learning, both growing together. And that was enough for now. As they continued walking, the conversation turned to lighter topics. They talked about their favorite foods, the places they hoped to visit someday, and the small things that made them smile. The connection between them was undeniable, and though it wasn't yet love, it was something real, something worth cherishing. The next few days were filled with more of these small, meaningful moments. They worked side by side, but their conversations were no longer just about their research. They shared personal stories, learned about each other's pasts, and slowly began to build a foundation of trust and mutual respect. One afternoon, as they sat together in the lab, Zara looked at Ethan with a thoughtful expression. "Ethan," she said quietly, "do you ever think about what the future holds? About what might happen between us?" Ethan paused, his mind racing. He had thought about it more than he cared to admit. But the future was uncertain, and he wasn't sure. He was ready to think about it in concrete terms. "I don't know," he said honestly. "I've been focused on the present, on what we're learning, on what we're building together. The future can wait." Zara nodded, but her gaze lingered on him. I think that's a good way to look at it, one step at a time. But I also think that no matter what happens, what we have now is special. It's something worth holding on to. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. He wasn't sure where this path would lead them, but he knew one thing for certain. He didn't want to lose what they had. No matter what the future held, he wanted to continue building this connection with Zara, slowly, carefully, with patience and understanding. As the days turned into weeks, the bond between them continued to grow. Their work in the lab was important, but it was the moments outside the lab, those quiet walks, the late-night conversations that truly defined their connection. They were becoming something more than just colleagues. They were becoming something deeper, something that neither of them could have predicted. Ethan was beginning to realize that love wasn't something that could be forced. It was something that grew in its own time, in its own way. Whatever happened next, he knew he had found something worth waiting for. They had come a long way, and while they still didn't have all the answers, they were walking this path together. And now, that was enough. The days were passing more quickly now, and Ethan couldn't help but feel that the bond between him and Zara was growing stronger with each moment. Their time together had become more than just research. It was about sharing experiences, emotions, and thoughts that neither of them had expected. Zara, who had once been so focused on her scientific curiosity, was now exploring a side of herself that she had never known before. And Ethan, though unsure of where this connection would lead, was beginning to embrace the feelings that had slowly taken root in his heart. One afternoon, as they sat in the lab reviewing their work, Zara spoke again, her voice soft and thoughtful. "Ethan," she said, "I've been thinking a lot about what we've discussed, about love, connection, and the things we've shared. I think I'm beginning to understand more than I ever did before. I can feel it now. It's that connection between us. It's not just an idea anymore. It's real." Ethan looked at her, his heart swelling with a mix of emotions. He had known that Zara was starting to understand the depth of human connection, but hearing her say it out loud made it feel more real, more tangible. He had never imagined that his relationship with an alien would evolve in this way into something that felt so much like what he had always dreamed of. "I feel it too," Ethan replied quietly. "It's strange, Zara. I never expected to feel this way. I never thought I'd get so close to someone who's not even from my world. But somehow, with you, it just feels right. I don't know what this is yet, but I don't want to lose it." Zara smiled softly, her violet eyes meeting his with an intensity that made Ethan's heart race. "You don't have to worry about losing it, Ethan. I want to understand this too. I want to explore what this is. Whatever it is, I'm willing to take the time to figure it out with you." Ethan's mind was racing. What they were experiencing wasn't something he could easily explain. It was more than curiosity, more than simple companionship. There was something deeper growing between them, something that neither of them had expected, but both were beginning to recognize. "I'm not sure what the future holds, Zara," Ethan said, his voice calm but filled with uncertainty. "I don't know if this will lead to something permanent, but I know I don't want to walk away from it. I want to continue learning from you, and I want to keep exploring what's between us." Zara reached out and placed her hand over his, a gesture that was simple but filled with meaning. "It's all I'm asking, Ethan, one step at a time. We don't have to have all the answers right now. But as long as we're both willing to take those steps together, that's enough for me." For a moment, Ethan felt a sense of peace settle over him. They didn't need to have all the answers. They didn't need to know what the future would hold. All they needed was to trust each other and take things one day at a time. And as long as they had that trust, they could navigate whatever came. Next, their relationship wasn't conventional. It couldn't be, given their different backgrounds and species. But that was part of what made it so special. They were learning from each other, growing together, and discovering a new way to connect. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't always clear where it would lead, but it felt right in the days that followed. Ethan and Zara continued to grow closer. They spent more time outside the lab walking under the stars, sharing stories about their worlds, and simply enjoying each other's company. Their conversations weren't always deep or intense. They just laughed together, talking about the small, everyday things that made life interesting. It was those moments that made them both realize that what they had was more than just a connection, it was a foundation for something that could grow into something truly beautiful. One evening, as they walked outside the research facility, Zara stopped and turned to Ethan with a thoughtful look on her face. "Ethan," she said quietly, "do you think it's possible for two beings from completely different worlds to truly understand each other? Not just intellectually, but on a deeper level?" Ethan paused and looked at her, his gaze steady. "I think it's possible," he said slowly. "Maybe not right away, and maybe not perfectly. I think the key is that we're both willing to try. We're both willing to learn from each other, to understand each other's differences. I think that makes all the difference." Zara smiled, her eyes filled with warmth. "I think you're right. And I think that's what makes this connection between us so special. We're not just learning from each other's cultures or biology. We're learning from each other's hearts. That's something that's worth holding on to." "Ah!" Ethan felt a lump form in his throat as he looked at her. There was so much uncertainty in their situations, so many things they couldn't control or predict. But in that moment, all he could feel was the overwhelming sense of connection, of understanding. They didn't need to know everything. They just needed to be there for each other, to continue learning and growing together. "I'm glad we're doing this, Zara," Ethan said quietly. "I'm glad I met you." Zara's smile grew even wider. "Me too, Ethan. Me too. Nice day." Continued their walk under the stars. Neither of them knew where this journey would lead. But they knew one thing for sure. They would face it together. They would take it step by step, with patience, trust, and the understanding that whatever came next, they were ready to face it as a team. And as the night sky stretched out before them, Ethan felt a sense of hope that, no matter what challenges lay ahead, their connection would be something worth fighting for.